if we have to maybe build our own polarity tool and polarity mapping tool, and if we have to maybe talk in the context of Scrum, what could be some of the polarities? If you can just throw few of the polarities so that people can get some direction, as in how we can lead this conversation.
Yeah. So in the book, I'm trying to distinguish polarities, where they might show up in the organization. I start at the one-on-one level. I go to teams, kind of like I have here, and kind of build it up. And it kind of follows my own experience and how I fell into all this, because this was all me just, exploring and curiosity driven. But yeah, you picked a good one.
Explain the concept of polarities in simple terms for our listeners. How does it differ from traditional either or thinking? And little bit about your book title, etc.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thanks again for the opportunity. So Polarities has become kind of a passion project. I fall into everything that's good in life. So this is something else that I just fell into.
Feeling stuck between stability and change, struggling to balance control with trust. If you are a Scrum Master, Agile Coach, or any Agile leader, navigating team polarities can feel like walking a tightrope. But what if these opposites weren't obstacles, but actually the key to discover your team's full potential? Join us today as we explore the power of embracing polarities in Agile teams. We'll delve into relatable examples like individuals versus collaboration, planning versus adaptation, and learn how to support these tensions to drive better decision making, boost innovation, and empower your team to thrive in an ever-changing Agile landscape. So for today's episode, we have Christopher Vestal as a guest. Chris is an Agile coach, speaker, trainer, and a debutant author of his upcoming book, Pathfinding with Polarities, a field guide for Agile practitioners. Chris comes with 20 years of experience spanning multiple disciplines in software development, project management, business analysis, quality assurance, and client services. With his book, he makes Agile practitioners aware of polarities with specific use cases that show success within Agile contexts. He aims to provide real tools that people can leverage to create what is needed by teams and organizations as a whole. So don't miss out on this practical and insightful discussion. So tune in now.
Hello, Chris. Welcome to the podcast by Agile Coaching Roundtable. It's great pleasure having you on our show. Welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting.
All right. So today we want to have a conversation with you regarding the concept of polarities in the leadership. And we know that you're coming with your book in, I think, mostly in the next month or so. And we would want to definitely talk about that. And so to begin with, we would want to check on the basic concept of polarity. So if you can just explain the concept of polarities in simple terms for our listeners, how does it differ from traditional either or thinking? And little bit about your book title, etc.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thanks again for the opportunity. So Polarities has become kind of a passion project. I fall into everything that's good in life. So this is something else that I just fell into, discovered or happened upon, and really, I think the biggest moment was realizing that I'd spent most of my life looking at everything as a problem to solve. And if you can imagine the anxiety and frustration that caused most of my life personally, and it was liberating, right, to see that certain things, well, you can't solve them, essentially. Those are the paradoxes, those are the dilemmas, those are the multiple truths that exist. And it's not that we create them, they just exist. We encounter them. They're all around us. We're actually part of polarities. Polarities make us make up, we're composed of polarities, and we're all kind of contradictory in some of our spirit. But essentially, for very practical purposes, I'll break it down, not getting all philosophical or spiritual about it, but polarities are simply sometimes they appear like problems, but they're really not resolvable. It's not really an either or choice, although sometimes it appears they could be. They're always typically take a both and form. It's really easier just to dive into, give examples of what polarities are rather than try to define it like some textbook term. But the textbook term is that they're interrelated. They could show up as multiple truths, and it'd be legitimate. It's not that you misunderstand. That's just how they show up, and it's not a problem to solve. Is the biggest takeaway. These are tensions. These are things that need to be balanced. And the good news is, if you find the way to balance them, then increasingly you'll get the natural positive consequences of keeping those in balance. That's a very important idea too. Otherwise, if things are in an imbalanced state, it can devolve and get worse and worse, and then you're reaping the negative consequences. Again, this is all natural. This is organic. This isn't anything contrived, and it's better just to jump right in and give examples, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, to begin with, I think where we can say that it will exist, it will continue to exist. I mean, in terms of not getting rid of it, obviously, it makes, as you mentioned, it's important to balance out, and also as you mentioned, and it will appear like a problem, but it's something that we can't solve. Is that right?
Right.
To put it across. While you were saying, since you spoke about it will, it will continue to remain, or it will continue to exist. What is, would you like to talk about what are some common polarities we encounter on a professional life, starting off with maybe into this conversation?
Yeah, no. So one of the polarities that is introduced in the beginning is the notion of something we're doing right now. We're inhaling and we're exhaling. So
Wow.
yeah, right. I asked the crowd, pick one. You can only do one. Pick one. You can't do it. The negative consequences of that imbalance is death, right? So it's very dire. It's very obvious, very contrasted. So we need to inhale, and we also need to exhale. If you inhale too much, you become hyperventilated. If you exhale too much and you don't inhale, well, that's really bad. So and this speaks to the very dire consequences, positive or negative, that maintaining the right balance could have. And that, I know that sounds, I looked at this when I first kind of discovered it, and I'm like, well, that's so obvious, right? Is that all there is to this? There's a lot more to polarities than simply recognizing the obvious. So I look forward to, I guess, showing you how we can apply this as Agilists, kind of diving into that. This may answer a few of the questions that you have. As an Agilist, looking at the software, the manifesto for software, I'm sorry, I'm messing this up. The manifesto for Agile software development, or
Agile.
yeah, also known as the Agile Manifesto. It's Friday morning. Forgive me. If you look at the 4 core values, while technically they're not polarities because they're not necessarily interrelated, you could say either or. But for our context, they basically function or can function as polarities. So if you take that stance and you look at the 4 core values and you look at them as polarities and something that needs to be balanced in context, that opens up a whole way of having conversations that didn't exist before. And I've used this to great success when I'm introducing to Agile, especially with people that are somewhat hostile to Agile. They think they know, but they've taken offense because maybe they were PMP guys or waterfallists or whatever, whatever tribe they belonged to before, and somehow along the way they were offended in some sense by Agile or the Agile movement. Well, this is a way to bring them back and make them feel good, and a good, not just to make them feel good, but it's true. Everything operates on a continuum. Agile, there was no need for the Agile movement until things went virtual, right? Up until that point, you had physical material costs, and it didn't make sense. It was more waterfall made more sense then, but it was the digital world, the ability to do really cheap experiments and continuous experiments and improve continuously like that, because there was virtually no cost involved. That's when Agile, the idea had found its moment. So, we shouldn't be snobs about Agile, and because legitimately it's all a continuum. Some applications, some organizations, some fill in the blank need agility, whereas other ones, they need more stability, and that is the basic polarity that Agile presents. Jim Highsmith, one of his quotes, the way he defines Agile or agility is the ability to balance flexibility and stability. So that's what we're
Absolutely.
talking about. So if you ask me now, what is Agile? I define it much differently than I did 3 years ago. Right now, if somebody asked me, I would say, well, it's a contextualized balance. Before, I would say, well, it's the right thing, doing it the right way, at the right cadence or the right rhythm. I would go back to the 3 R's is what they're called. Or I would say, it's value, it's flow, it's quality. That's how I would have defined Agile before, apart from obviously the Agile manifesto that kind of set the movement off. But you can use polarities to explain, not just explain the core values of the manifesto, but it's practical to them, it's contextualized to them. So documentation is a good one to start with, right? Does the Agile manifesto say no documentation? A lot of people take that away from it somehow, right?
Yes.
And it's not
Yes.
really the case. And again, Jim Highsmith, he recently, I saw a post where he made and providing a lot it was really good and a lot of valuable content that he provided around, okay, this is how I see documentation where it's useful versus a liability, it's actually useful. That was a really good post that I saw. But yeah, so Agile Manifesto never said no documentation, but there's these people that are kind of uber agilists who think, well,
I love this word.
right? Like if you don't do any documentation at all, then that must mean that you're super agile, you're uber agile. No, that's not the case. You have to find the balance, right? And we could talk about the framework wars and how you have all these tribes now within Agile and this fragmentation within Agile. If we're really trying to rewild Agile, as Dave Snowden says, if we're really trying to go back to the beginning, we can find balance in the balance that the way they framed the manifesto. And that's kind of what my book is about. Is it's more of a field guide. It's not philosophical. I'm actually talking much more philosophically this morning than my book. It's more of a field guide. It's really to put tools in people's hands so they can start experimenting, so they can see for themselves. And I don't consider myself a deep expert. I want to put that up front. I'm sure that I'll get a lot of flack for getting things wrong. One of the things that gave me the courage is I had a little bit of a health scare this past few months, and up until then, I didn't really want to put myself out there. I was like, that it's painful. It's you're opening yourself up to criticism or critique, and especially on LinkedIn, it's just kind of horrible. But I just want to put something out to the world that resonated with me, that has helped me personally, and I've seen it help others. I've been able to help others, and I really think this is not the way, but perhaps a way to have a conversation that needs to happen, desperately needs to happen within Agile circles. I started off with like one-to-one coaching, and we could do some of that sometime, Rami. Like it's basically I just ask them, hey, what's going on? What's been happening in your life? And they'll speak to like 15 minutes, and I'll take notes, just pulling out the polarities that are coming up. And once you
Wow.
understand, this is what's so cool about it, is once you hear about polarities, they'll just start appearing. They'll just start popping into existence, and you'll start recognizing them, and you're like, oh, wait. It's like this whole world just opens up that's right in front of you that was there all the time. And it's like I forget the scientific word for it, but it's like if you buy a car, you buy a Volkswagen Passat, and then all of a sudden all you see on the road are other Volkswagen Passats. It's kind of like that. It's an awareness that it just kind of emerges. And I don't know, I get overexcited about it a bit, but I think if people try it out for themselves, they'll see very quickly how powerful polarities are, and that we're not creating polarities. We're just kind of recognizing their existence and respecting them in a way. And that's what I would like to introduce to people is how these polarities, if you can find a way to maintain the balance, and that's the key. Like, how do you know they're in balance, right? If you recognize, okay, well, these polarities exist, well, what do I do now? So there's tools out there that let you dynamically map them. and you can have confidence every morning. You can do gut checks every morning to make sure, okay, am I showing up correctly? Essentially, am I bringing the right presence into my meetings? That would be one application. Do I understand the position of others? Am I really trying to be empathetic, not for the sake of getting my own way, right? But truly being authentic and truly empathetic, not for some other separate agenda or separate motivation. It changes how you present yourself, how you show up every day. At least that's the impact it's had mainly on me personally.
Oh wow. I mean, I think you opened a Pandora of questions for us with this answer. And maybe let's break it down into, I
Yeah,
mean, one by one. So maybe I would want to understand maybe the difference between, you also mentioned previously about a problem. So I want to
yeah,
maybe understand the difference between the problem and polarity, and
yeah.
what are the consequences of mistaking polarity, I mean, problem with a polarity. If you can share some example of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. So again, it goes back to choice. With a problem, you have a choice, either or. With a polarity, usually it shows up and it's not really an either or choice. If you pick one over the other, then you're creating that imbalance. Essentially, you're reinforcing an imbalance that already exists. So you want to be careful to recognize that, okay, this is something that needs to be managed, and this is something that can truly be solved. So one way you know that you're dealing with a polarity is you think you solve something, but it just comes back and it recurs and it recurs and it recurs. You need to step back maybe and say, okay, is this a polarity? Are there different things going on here? Is this truly solvable? Um, but typically they're pretty obvious. Like a problem, you have a choice. So do I want blue seats in my Volkswagen Passat, or do I want black seats in my Passat? Well, I'm going to choose blue, or I'm going to choose white because it reflects light better. You have a choice, right? You can reason with that. With polarities, you don't really reason with them like you do problems. You just have to accept them, and then you have to find ways to balance. So that's the key there. Is you once you recognize it, you have to take a completely different approach. And if you don't recognize that they're polarities, kind of like I alluded to before, you're just going to live a very frustrated life, as it turns out. So, so if you're frustrated, maybe look at things, like start analyzing it a bit. Um, Ironically, polarities are very intuitive. Again, we're part of polarities. Polarities are part of us. So they're there. It's just recognizing them and knowing how to map them out in efficient ways. And the tools that they're not my tools. I didn't invent them. These were created by a gentleman named Barry Johnson. I'm happy to share, links to him, both
Yes,
on
please.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's very generous. He has like several videos that are 2 hours long. Like he'll explain this much better than me even, but I'm an agilist, so I have a passion to share this with other agilists. Is why I'm kind of stepping into this role, if you will. But um, yeah, it can be bad, right? If you don't recognize these polarities, you'll live a very frustrated life. And um, but you have an opportunity once you do see them and you start using them, they'll make an immediate impact on not just yourself but others. You'll see it. So that's been my experience. Mileage may vary.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. And while you were answering, you did mention that, obviously the problems has a choice in terms of, okay, what decision making for it. But when we're
Mhm.
talking about polarity, obviously, even if we make a decision towards one, obviously there is an imbalance, and that is what will create more problems. That is what I feel. And then you also mentioned that there are maybe, in terms of efficient ways to map it. I think we'll talk about it when we come to the, certain techniques of how to handle it. But for now, if maybe I have a question over here, is like, what do you see in terms of, some potential benefits of embracing a polarity based approach in leadership style, especially for agile teams?
Yeah, there's entire leadership courses already out there around polarities, and I considered, I started developing a course around leadership, and that exists. That's something maybe I'll offer later, but I've started that with at the team of teams level because I think that there's a lot of space there, and people need these tools there. Um, when you're dealing with yourself as an individual, that's hard enough. and then you're introduced to a team, and that's a polarity. The individual and the collective, that's a polarity. When you join a team, you have to sacrifice something of yourself, or potentially, right? You have to be willing to give something up to be part of that team, and that's just how that polarity works. But how do you know you're giving too much of yourself? Another polarity is work and life. Am I putting too much into my work, or am I putting too much in? That's another
Oh,
polarity.
wow.
And right, like they're all around you. It's so obvious once you start seeing them. And I should caution you, like you're going to walk away today and you're going to be like, Chris, he's messing with me, because you'll start seeing polarities. It's not me. It's just you're recognizing the world around you in a different way. It's really that life changing.
Wow, amazing. I mean, I love the way you are giving the examples. It is so relatable. And I know this is coming from the agilist in you, definitely, because we are used to so much of coaching that we tend to give analogies. And I think this is the analogies or the examples that you're giving are really amazing. It would really help our listeners and viewers relate to their own real life and professional life. And sometime back, Chris, you spoke about the polarities in Agile Manifesto, right? So maybe I would just go back to that kind of a conversation and maybe want to ask you, how do the principles and values of Agile or maybe Scrum inherently embrace and navigate polarities?
Yeah, so the values in Scrum are a little bit different, and I don't want to critique Scrum, but like focus, I don't know that focus is a true value. That's my own personal belief. I don't mean to challenge Scrum. I think it's valuable to have focus, and you can say that you value focus, but focus itself may not be a value. Really, the polarities that I see, the way the Agile Manifesto frames, while we value the things on the right, we value the things on the left more. So
Right.
they're implying a balance, that these things need to be balanced. They're not saying that these things are bad or right or wrong. Again, that's a polarity. It's not right or wrong. It's not black or white. We're saying that there's some spectrum in here. These are the way the polarity, right, is it's not black and white thinking. When you start working with groups, you automatically have in groups and out groups, these tribes, these that are driven by beliefs, or maybe not even beliefs, but just who they are, identity. Well, one way I've seen of breaking through that is using polarities to expose that, because we make so many assumptions in our day-to-day life. If we are trying to build a team, for instance, maybe it's a good thing that things can surface in a controlled environment versus things just popping off in, as things just appear. Maybe it's good to have some conversations and introduce potential conflict, but in a controlled environment to build a team, right? That's one aspect. Where I've seen that, especially with Scrum, especially with other frameworks, is that everybody has their own version of Scrum, right? At this
True.
point, everybody's worked in like 8 places, and all those 8 places have done Scrum differently. We all have a notion. I mean, the Scrum Guide exists, and we should probably follow it more closely. But everybody, doesn't read the Scrum Guide. Let's start there. Everybody has, maybe people have never even read the Scrum Guide. Let's start there.
Correct.
But they bring their assumptions, right? Well, that's dangerous, because it automatically pits people against each other. And in the end, you can say that it's called polarity mapping. This tool that we have, you can say that it's sense making, and it is sense making. But I really think it's more peacemaking. You can use it to make peace, because you're challenging
Wow.
you're in a safe way, in a safe environment. You're setting this up to where the conversation happens, and it's not for the sake of the conversation. It's truly to build. It's truly to build a team. There's a purpose behind it, so it's driven by a purpose. It's not just willy-nilly. But you have these conversations, whatever those conversations need to be. Like I could be prescriptive and say you should have these type of conversations with your team. Um, One challenge in the book is that right now I'm really wrestling with, how do I present this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm saying this is the list of polarities that you need to go through and get done and
Wow.
check off, right? I don't want it to be that way. I want it to be, they have to think and they have to contextualize, and it should be just the same approach I use with coaching. Like, how's your week been? What problems have you experienced? And then the person can listen, if they're truly a team coach, they can listen and they can pick up the polarities of the team, and then pick up the, then you can do maybe a dot vote. I don't know. I'm making this stuff as you go along. This is part of the fun, right? Do a dot vote of like
Absolutely.
which is resonating the most with the team, and then you go into the polarity. That's how I've been doing it. So it's very much a coaching, more of a systemic coaching kind of style, which is what I've gravitated to.
Wow. And in that conversation, really love that, maybe approach that you made is like moving over from a more sense making approach to a more peacemaking approach, right? That was thus, a kind of wow, that's something refreshing to hear. And obviously, as you also mentioned, that driven by a purpose kind of a thing, right? Maybe putting in perspective how it is making a difference, right? But this is where I think more often working as an agile coach or a scrum master with the teams, this is where the trickier or the challenging things comes across. Uh, as a scrum master or as an agile coach, it becomes difficult to manage the polarities within the team. Just with the example, of taking it from the manifesto itself, right? Comparing it between what is on the left and what is on the right, when there are people around saying that no, hey, this is not the right thing, hey, this is the thing. How do you think that can be taken care of?
Yeah, so you have to be subtle. So one thing too, big caveat is, in the beginning I was so excited about polarities that I would try to introduce them everywhere, and it really upset people. Um, you know, you have to be very strategic and tactical kind of at the same time. That's another polarity, strategic and tactical. All right. So you have to find a moment to introduce these, and one way of doing it is as an icebreaker. You have a polarity mapping session, and
Uh,
you do it as an icebreaker, and it could be something as simple as hot and cold. Um, do you like hot food, and you don't define it any other way. So people start asking the question. This is how this happens. I've done this many times now. People will start questioning, what does he mean by hot? Well, that's a good question. What do I mean by hot? What do you think I mean by
right.
hot? You don't define, you leave it open, right? Well, do you mean spicy? Well, do you like spicy food? You don't answer, you don't define, you don't clarify. You just let them be themselves. It opens up so many conversations, and you learn so much about your team just by that one icebreaker. But that's based off of a polarity, right? Um, Cold. Maybe people like ice cream, so they're going to say, "I like cold food," or "I like sandwiches." I don't know. Um, but that's the way the conversation evolves, and that's part of the fun is watching them wrestle with it, and not in a Machiavellian or mean way, but watching them the wrestle with it and reach their own conclusions, and you can see their thinking process, and they're really trying. It's a lot of fun to see them and where they land with all of this. It's so much fun, and it's a team building exercise like you would start out. So a lot of times I'll sneak that in as the icebreaker, something that simple, and then they're like, what did we just do? Always somebody will come up to me after that icebreaker and say, I've never seen an icebreaker like that. That was kind of interesting. um, some people have
Correct.
seen it because see, people, there is an icebreaker out there called this or that, which is ends up being a polarity, but it's or either. They're trying to say either or, but a lot of times it ends up being a polarity, or that's the way the exercise comes off. But yeah, try that. If you just try that one thing, it might give people confidence to get deeper. If you have people that you mentor, there's a very easy approach to. I've already given it. It's just that simple. It's listen. If it's a 30-minute block of time, like most one-on-ones are, just let them talk for the first 15 minutes, pull up the mapping tool, say these are the polarities, these are the pairs that I picked up in your conversation. Do you want to explore these further? And you don't really talk. It's them actually intuitively pulling it out of you're giving them an opportunity to pull it out of themselves. I've done this so many times, and it's just so I've never had this many aha moments in this concentrated amount of time. I'll give an example. So this was outside of
Yes,
Agile,
please.
but it was kind of like a career thing. This person had approached me because she wanted to be a Scrum Master, and she had taken 6 or 7 courses. She'd been through boot camps and
Mm-hmm.
mentoring and all the technical, tactical, all that stuff, but she didn't have confidence. She's like, "How will I know when I'm ready?" And I said, well, you're caught in a learn and do loop. You're doing a lot of learning, but not any doing. It's an imbalance,
Amazing.
right? It was that simple. And she's like, you're right. And I don't even know if I was that obvious. I think on her own, she reached that conclusion. I didn't think I actually had to say anything, although I was thinking it really, really loudly. She came to it on her own, and she's a Scrum Master now. And,
Wow.
that's just one example of she just needed confidence. And that's about 80% of the people. And again, this is the tool that gives you that confidence because you can use it one time and make a decision, reach a decision point by examining the polarity and realizing, okay, this dynamic, I need to watch it. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that you revisit polarities every day. Some polarities are just more like, okay, where am I going wrong? Why am I in an imbalanced state? And then you fix it, and that's it. Other ones, like one that I use almost every day is resist or flow. Do I need to resist? Like if
Wow.
something's going on, do I need to push back, or do I just need to go with the flow? Because um, I have red hair, and so we have a bad temper. All the ginger jokes aside, we're known for being opinionated. Maybe is another way of saying it. So, do I need to resist? Because that's my default. I like to be a little bit contrarian, or do I just need to flow and be a bit more accepting and happy? Right? Like that's a choice, but you're getting there through examining and making the choices based off of balancing that polarity. So it's not you're making decisions and navigating your environment, understanding more about yourself, understanding more about the how you're showing up to the world. That can only lead to more positive results. So, in the Agile Coaches growth wheel, that's the first stop, right? Self mastery. So you use this
Correct.
yourself, right? I have my own set of polarity maps that I revisit every day, every other day. But then you can work with other people and help them out as one-to-one coaching and mentoring. You can use this with your teams. I've used this with team of teams and group of people that were beating each other up, banging each other's heads. A good one. This is one that actually Barry Johnson, the creator of the polarity mapping and polarity thinking, he gives this as strangely one of his first applications. That if you watch some of his videos, it was in IT within the Defense Department. It was security and accessibility, or being actually able to be
Oh, wow.
effective, right? That's one that we deal with every day, like security or approachability or ease of use, or if it's so secure that you can't use it, it's no good. So these two departments, the security had it locked down. They had created this imbalance essentially, and the users were saying, but we can't use the data if we can't get the data, or if we can't. Like there was this polarity. It was this balance that they had to figure out on their own of what was appropriate security wise, so it would be safeguarded. But how do we use it when it's all locked down? So that was a way to have that conversation. And peacemaking. That's, you have this department, security says this, we're this tribe, we have to win. It's about winning. It's about ego.
Correct.
So this is what I mean when it says it's about peacemaking, is people realize the benefit of both sides, not just their side. And that's part of it, is like the right quadrant is literally represents when you start doing the mapping piece of it. That right quadrant, right upper quadrant, actually represents what are we missing, what benefit exists that we might not even recognize. So it's querying them, it's prompting them to ask themselves that question. You're not really asking it, but you're guiding them through this process of mapping. Well, that's like the biggest piece, is what are we missing? What benefit could we have that we don't even recognize? So it's very much a introspective facilitation, and you're pulling it out of them. And I shared a board, right? It has like 5 exercises that have been done. All those happened within an hour's time. I showed this to a friend. I won't say who. You probably know them, and they're like, "This is way too much. You should have pared this down. And how did you fit this into an hour?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it looks like each one of these would have taken an hour, but I did 5
Yes.
in an hour." It's all intuitive. This isn't analytical. You're not exercising that part of the brain. It's not that you're reasoning. It's you're just letting it come out. It's just surfacing what's already there inside of you. So it's very powerful for that. It's very effective and efficient in that respect. If you looked at the maps, you'll see what I'm saying. It looks very detailed, like
Yes,
somebody really
yes.
spent time on it. No. I did those 5 with a large group within an hour's time. They also did a retrospective, which took like 10 minutes. So I did 5 in 40
Wow.
minutes. So on average, it was less than 10 minutes for each of those maps. That's how effective this is and efficient this is. So, and in the one-on-one coaching, you can do 3 mappings. Because just one-on-one, you can do 3 mappings, like 3 sets of polarities in 10, 15 minutes. That's how fast this is. People won't believe me. They just have to experiment, try it out, and come back to me and let me know how it worked out for them. So,
Wow. I mean, so many beautiful points that you talked about. I mean, you already answered what I wanted to ask about
oh,
tools and techniques. So maybe since you talked about polarity mapping tool, right? So I mean, this is what I'm asking you from the beginner's point of view. Though I have seen your Miro board that you have shared, definitely. But for the people who do not know yet about that
yeah,
Miro board, and obviously, we would want you to talk about it when you release it for the rest of the world. And so maybe if I have to put it from the Scrum Masters perspective or an Agile Coaches perspective, say if they are doing this, Scrum, and
mhm,
they are in their, I mean, in the entire scheme of sprints, if
right,
we have to pick up some polarities, the way you pointed out, so one of the polarities I could think of is maybe planning versus adaptability. That could be
right,
one of the polarities, right?
yeah,
So if we have to maybe build our own polarity tool and polarity mapping tool, and if we have to maybe talk in the context of Scrum, what could be some of the polarities, if you can just throw few of the polarities so that people can get some direction as in how we can
yeah.
lead this conversation.
Yeah, so in the book, I'm trying to distinguish polarities where they might show up in the organization. I start at the one-on-one level. I go to teams, kind of like I have here, and kind of build it up. And it kind of follows my own experience and how I fell into all this, because this was all me just exploring and curiosity driven. Um, but yeah, you picked a good one. So one of the first ones that I noticed, and that I'd given this thought before I even knew what polarities were, was this notion of waterfall versus agile, right? Like that's the big argument. And finally, people have gotten to a point where they're like, that's really not a good argument. But for argument's sake, like let's go back to those times. So I'm not critiquing here. I'm just saying this is, and this is a broad brush, a broad stroke brush here that I'm painting with. So I don't want to offend anyone at all. That's not what I'm here to do. Just the opposite. But Waterfall was known for big upfront planning, big bang event, that sort of thing. Following a plan rigorously. That wasn't truly the intent of the people behind Waterfall, but that's how it ended up kind of manifesting itself over time. People thought that's what they should be doing. Agile is about, and it kind of takes after lean, borrows from lean thinking here, where it's more of just enough, just in time. Again, but then it really wasn't. What I uncovered was the argument was wrong. It was framed wrong because it wasn't waterfall versus agile, right? It was waterfall versus no planning. It was over planning versus under planning or no planning, right? So
Absolutely.
so that was really the polarity. And where's the balance found? Well, the balance is agile. That is the contextualized balance. That's where I realized, okay, this is very interesting. And I worked that out further, talked to a lot of different people around, and I became more and more convicted of that. Agile is that balance in the middle, and we're having the wrong conversation. We're fighting over something that's the balance. And what we need to do is just pull people together once they understand, well, there's an imbalance created by insufficient planning. There's an imbalance created by over planning. What if we meet somewhere in the middle? We can call it Agile. You can call it whatever you want, really. I'm not trying to get stuck on Agile.
Correct, correct.
Right. Labels aren't important here. But what that Agile is in your day, Ramya, might look different than my day or for my teams, or it's very contextual, which is
True.
another, people get stuck on, best practices. And now they've moved away from that, thankfully, or anti-patterns. And this is, how you do Scrum or how you don't do Scrum. Like, if we really want to get to a point where we can shed frameworks altogether, this is one of the ways. Not the way, there's other ways. First principles, I would look at that too. That's very valid. But polarities is a valid technique that's so accessible. Like, I just want people to try this once. Just try it once. Try it with yourself. Try it with one other person before you introduce it to your teams. Then introduce it to your teams, right? I'm hoping that helps. Does that answer your question, Rami? Like, there are a set of
Absolutely.
polarity. Yeah. So the big one is stability and innovation. If you're working in a big bank,
Wow.
right, they're going to say stability every single time you ask the question. Which one do we need to focus on? Do we need to focus on stability or innovation? They're going to be like, their eyes will bug out at you. I've seen it happen. Of course, stability. They'll yell at you. Of course, stability. And the reason that is, appreciate their context. The federal government, at least here in the United States, if they have some regulatory issue or something goes offline, if they have a data breach, they literally could take the bank. My understanding, I could be wrong, but my understanding is they could literally take the whole bank. The federal government could come in and take the whole bank and put it in receivership until they got their stuff together. So this is kind of a big deal for banks. So when you ask them stability, innovation, as an Agilist, we want them to say innovation. They're never going to say innovation. They'll never say
Correct.
that. So you have to change the conversation, right? You have to understand, in this context, how can I be successful with Agile in that context? There is a way. I'm telling you, there is hope. And it's not by upsetting a bunch of people, trying to convince them and change their mind on, oh, you should be more innovative. That message, you will not penetrate a centimeter with that message. You will not change their minds. There is no changing minds. There's no mindset changes happening
Correct.
there. You have to find another way. You have to find another way. So it's an interesting conversation. And I've worked in finance and banking for the last few years. And again, I feel like I could take it and I could tell you all the heartbreak stories, all the frustrations, all the anxieties that I've lived through over the last 3 years. But I hope people will just, especially people that find themselves in similar challenging situations, try this. It's not that you have to introduce it to your team. It's not that you are going to take polarity mapping and suddenly all your problems are solved. It's not about that. It's about achieving balance over time. And it'll take time. This isn't like an overnight thing. But what you'll gain immediately is confidence. What you'll gain immediately is some bit of clarity that you probably don't have now, and you're struggling to find some sense of direction or some sense of clarity, like trying to make sense of the world. This will get you there very quickly.
Wow. I mean, two of the things that that clicked my mind are maybe clarity over solution, right? We all need clarity. So solutions will emerge out of the clarity, right?
Yeah.
So that is one thing that clicked me when you talked about this. And another one could be the controversial one when I say this
Right.
within the organizations. One of the polarities could be project manager versus scrum master. We should learn to coexist in a project, right? So why not? As I mentioned, it could be controversial, and people will say that you have to choose either project manager or the scrum master. But in practical application, we
Yeah.
do have project managers as well, right? So maybe
Yeah.
that could be one of the polarities. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, no, that raises an interesting point. So I want to be clear about this. Some people, like, I consider myself an Agilist, a pure Agilist. Like, I'm not trying to dilute the Agile Manifesto. I believe in that movement. My mentor, who I want to represent, he passed early in life. I'm trying to keep his voice alive. I'm a pure Agilist. Like, I don't even pretend to be something other than what I am. The beauty of polarities too is that you can still be your whole self and maintain your integrity it does not require anyone to compromise. That's not what we're talking about here. There are trade-offs. We are talking about trade-offs maybe, but you can be your whole self, and this is how you remain your whole self without creating holes in your soul in working places that frankly
Correct.
sometimes are toxic, right? For Agilists, they're very toxic. So this is how I've been able to recuperate, if you will, and save my own soul to a degree. You don't have to. It's not an either or thing. And the more people that start thinking both ends, you are going to shape the culture. I'm not suggesting you can change culture, but you can start shaping the culture as people get that notion of both and, or yes and, even better maybe. Like, you're not right, I'm not right, we're both right. There's a lot of powerful significance of that realization when you're dealing with other people. Instead of both of us being wrong, right? A lot of times both of us are wrong, and we're stuck in our wrongness, when if we work together we could find a better way. That's what Agile is, finding a better way. And that's what I mean by being integral. If you stick with the purpose of Agile, forget the frameworks, forget all of that stuff, be agnostic, really look at what works, be pragmatic. These are the adjectives we should be using, not agile. We should be saying we're pragmatic. We should. I'm not trying to kick Agile in any stretch, but when you turned an adjective into a noun, that had consequences, but it made things very easy to bundle and sell. That's why Agile came about, capital A, Agile. I'm sorry, I'm probably being a little bit preachy here.
No, no, no,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, when you said this, I mean, this reminded me of our conversation with Joshua Kirviski, and
mm,
he mentioned in the conversation in the podcast with him is that we need to treat agile as a verb and not as a
yeah,
noun. And it
yeah,
it I mean blew my mind in so many levels. Obviously, I mean, we talk about agile like a noun saying that no, we need to do this, but then it's an adjective, right? So it's like an action. Maybe we would say that agile world or maybe agile thing. So it makes more sense when we use it as a small a rather than capital A, as you rightly mentioned.
yeah.
No, you're not digressing from the topic at all, and I mean, you may go all guns blazing when you want to talk about that topic, and we would love to listen to you.
Yeah, so look at LinkedIn, for example. Look at some of the flame wars, some of the crazy conversations there. And I participate way too much in some of the craziness. So people might see some of my posts and might, hear this conversation and be like, oh, he's such a hypocrite. And I am. I'm like a complete hypocrite
No, no, no.
to a degree, right? Um, it's fun to have interesting conversations. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, but 90% of the conversations that don't have a good conclusion, where people just they don't reach some level of understanding, it's because there is this imbalance and they're trying to solve a problem that's not a problem. If you pay attention, that's the key. They're saying it's a problem, but it's a set of preferences, a set of beliefs that are informing those preferences. If we step back for just half a minute and recognize, well, there's value in their beliefs. Not everybody's, we all have a bit of the truth. If we just take a moment back and are truly humble and get rid of the ego, even if they're completely wrong, especially if they're completely wrong, right? And you start saying, you start looking at saying, well, what maybe do I have wrong? What do they have right? And you focus on how they could be right. um, that's helped me personally to navigate. And not that I don't get frustrated with people. A lot of times people will take your words and twist them, or they'll try to make a point that's really not there, or they'll talk about things that they really don't understand. Again, we're all guilty of this. We're all hypocrites in the end, like we really are as humans, and we can't help it. And let me explain what I mean by that, because it's kind of a heavy charge. That we're all hypocrites. What I mean by that is simply that we can't know everything, and so we have to fake
Yes.
it at some level. We're all faking it at some level, right? And so imposter syndrome, that's another one. Imposter syndrome comes with the realization that I'm faking it, and the fear that I'll be found out, right? That's imposter syndrome. But if you're presenting yourself to the world in a different way, in a way of sending love out to the world. Oh, that sounds so hokey when I even say it. But if you're really trying to act out of love instead of acting out of fear, wouldn't the world be a much better place in general? Like,
Absolutely.
there's problems that will never be resolved, but that's how we address these dilemmas and paradoxes and multiple truths. Let's get rid of the binary thinking. It's not to say that one person isn't right. I do believe in objective truth, which is kind of an interesting thing, if you think about it, because I've been talking up to this point of, there's not a right, there's not a wrong. There is objective truth. I do believe that. What I don't believe is that we have it ourselves, or that we could possibly ever know it all ourselves, or that we could fit it into our head all ourselves. And we all have a piece of the truth because the whole truth is not revealed and may never be revealed. So we have to approach that very humbly. And humility is an interesting English word. A lot of people think that it just means the absence of arrogance, right? People mostly define it by a negative, like it's not this. Really, humility is just simply knowing your place in the world. That's the definition of humility. So if you look at humility to people that are overly humble, again, a polarity, a continuum here, people that are overly humble, and people like that do exist. Unfortunately, not as many as probably should. Most people are on the other side of the spectrum. But some people that have low self-esteem, or it's hard for them to break out of their shell, or they don't see the value. Others may see it, but they don't see it in themselves. That's being unhumble. That's not a show of humility. If they knew their place, if they saw the value they could bring to others, if they just stepped out of their shell, like there's that lesson too in this. So humility is multifaceted as well. We define it in such a narrow way, and a lot of the conversations we have on LinkedIn or other places, they're very interesting because we're just so blessed to live in an age like, where are you guys sitting right now, right? Where am I sitting right now? We're thousands of miles away.
Exactly.
So we're just so blessed to be able to experience each other, to talk and converse and get a better understanding. It's a great time, exciting time to be alive. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, Chris, in this last 15 minutes of conversation, to be very honest, I felt like, you continue talking. It's so wonderful to, keep on listening to, because there were certain points that you made it very clear. As you know, just with an example on the LinkedIn talk that you talk about, there is so much of going around bashing each other, talking so much of negativity, throwing out things, and instead of, as you mentioned, whether we are selling something or whether we are solving something, leaving aside that aspect, and just trying to prove each other wrong, and trying to put yourself saying that I'm right over here. So it was such a wonderful listening to all those aspects. And uh, it's really amazing to to get to know you as a person,
no,
because obviously it makes gives us a clear understanding of how humble, how kind you are to put across those thoughts, while still putting across what is more important for us at this point of time, from a point that how we are interacting, or how we are reaching out or collaborating with each other to make things much more better for everyone, right? How or maybe how do you think we can leverage polarity in certain way uh, to address, or to see how we can have healthy conflicts within our team, right? Or maybe
yeah,
encouraging diverse perspective, and also to help make better decision. I know, some or the other way you have answered this question into this conversation, but
yeah,
do you want to, summarize it all together in this context?
yeah. No, there's another polarity that's out there that's haunting Agilists, and I'd like to speak to that just for a minute or two. We're all worried about the state of affairs. Sorry, not earthquake. That was just my desk. Sorry. So Agilists, a lot of us are looking at the economy, looking at the marketplace, and seeing, diminishing value, or the pay scale is lowered, or there's not as many opportunities. That's all on everybody's mind. So the polarity that was in play, and it has nothing to do with us or our value. And this is really this is like a key message that I want to get out into the world. You're not devalued by this situation. I mean, you could look at it and say, well, obviously we are, because the economy, blah, blah, blah. So the polarity in play here is growth and profit. That was the imbalance. There was an imbalance in the system. We could blame and point fingers, and we could say, it was tech execs who were doing this and hiring too many people, blah, blah. That's above my pay grade, right? I'm not here to do that. But I just want there to be a recognition that it's cyclical, but it doesn't have to be cyclical, right? What I mean by that is, what if we were able to perfectly balance growth and profit? You wouldn't have this imbalance. That's like the whole point. And this is another example of, we find ourselves in a polarity that's very frustrating, but we need to recognize that it is just a polarity, and we don't want there to be overhiring or too much growth. We want somebody to understand somewhere that maybe we just need to grow at enough of a pace while looking at profit, while balancing both of those, so we don't find ourselves in a similar situation. Because right now, I feel like people have invested a lot, and maybe they'll have a job, maybe they won't. I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller. We all should look at this as a warning of, don't put your eggs in one basket. Like, there's all kinds of colloquialisms there, like, right? Like, diversify, But what I really want people to take away, this has nothing to do with Agile. That's the takeaway. This is about the economy. This has nothing to do with the value of Agile or individual Agilists or us as a group. It doesn't. There's just as many, or percentage-wise, there might be even more Agilists affected than, say, developers. That's just because there's more developers. All right. Like, I just want to have that conversation really quickly and put people not at ease. This is another thing. Fear is not. We talked earlier about acting out of fear. Fear is your friend in some certain situations. Like, if your house is on fire and you don't react appropriately, if you don't have the proper fear, well, like, that's not good. So even fear, even what we consider very negative things like fear or hate or anger, even these very strong emotions, there's a time and occasion to be anger. Anger is a very volatile. It's the most dangerous emotion. But
Mhm.
you can be indignant and be right. Now, it's hard to be fully right because your ego is going to engage there. So it's not about whether you should be angry or not. Sometimes you can't control it, but it's more about what productivity or what productive thing can come out of your anger. So there's a lot of reasons to be angry in this world. So I'm not saying that we should be positive all the time, and these polarities will keep you in this balance of super positivity or harmonious. I'm just going to put a smile on my face. No, I want you to. I want everyone to live the full spectrum of life. I mentioned a health scare. Um, that was a set of imbalances that I won't go into. But my lifestyle, bad habit, just fill in the blank. You can imagine it. It'd probably be, better
Correct.
than the reality of what you can imagine. But we all have imbalances in our life. If we can approach those, our outcomes will improve. If we can take them seriously, our outcomes will improve. But live the full spectrum. We're all going to be sad. This isn't a panacea. We're all going to be frustrated. We're all going to be angry, and we should be. Like, this is frustrating, and it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay. But if we realize that this is just part of our human experience, that you didn't do anything to deserve this, it lets you accept things more quickly, and so your focus becomes much more productive much sooner. So the meaning that you feel like you need to find in whatever situation you're in, you find that meaning, you recognize it, it surfaces much sooner to you, and then you can move on with your life, and you can enjoy So there's a cyclical notion around this. Back to more pragmatic and practical things. I'm not pitching my book. I just mentioned that on
No, please. I mean, even if you need to, please
yeah.
do so. I mean, do not feel hesitant about it.
Well, so I would say right now, if somebody wanted to talk with me, I'm open. The workshop, basically what I showed you, that mural board, that particular mural board was an example. Let me clean it up and make it available publicly. But I want everybody to be able to access that for free. I'm not trying to make money. This is not me trying to, work my way out of Agile. Just the opposite. I'm trying to give Agilists tools to kind of rewild themselves and get it back. That's my intent.
So kind of you.
Right? If that makes sense. Like, I'm not trying to become a book author. I'm an Agilist. I'm going to be coaching. If I can give the book away, I'm trying to do that, frankly. So, this is not a commercial exercise. I want to be clear about that. If workshops come from it, that's fine. Maybe I'll charge something for those in the future, but I'm really just trying to get the message out. And again, I didn't have the courage. Like, I didn't have the courage to really take action on the book. I had been writing articles and really more musings and contemplations. I was going to share them with my son and with my daughter. That was the intent. But then I thought, the people that know me, because there's no fear. That's a safe thing to do, right? Like, you're not going to be judged harshly for doing that by your kids. They'll just appreciate it and hopefully appreciate it. And that was my intent starting out. But then I thought, somebody had to be courageous, or somebody had to put themselves out there for me to find out about this. So if I'm going to be if I'm going to have integrity, if I'm going to be authentic, I need to step into this. So that's what this is about. It's not anything other than that. And so many Agile books are out there. I'm not knocking them. They're all within the same intent of helping Agilists. But I just want to be clear about my intent. I'll give this stuff away as if I could. So it's not really mine. I see myself more as a caretaker, more somebody that maybe has shaped some of the conversation. I can't claim any of this. This is just me finding this, picking it up off the ground, dusting it off, and saying, I think I could use this in my everyday. And then I tried it and it worked for me. And what I'm saying now is, I think it'll work for a lot of people. I think it'll bring some good into the world. And whatever happens next is whatever happens next. I really hope it helps people, though. How do you introduce it to teams? The icebreakers. I try to stay away from the word polarities, because then they're going to ask, what the hell is a polarity? And then you're going to have to go into the whole conversation. It's an easy conversation to have. Like, this isn't hard stuff to explain. But really, and this is the limitation of this particular forum, just experience them. Get them in front of people as quickly as you can, is my advice. Practice personally, like, do that for sure. Build up your own confidence. Watch some of the videos and people doing it. Reach out to me. I'll walk you through it. I'll do the one-on-one session. We'll role play back and forth. Like, whatever you need, I'm there to support people. If somebody wants to go deep and wide with this, just reach out to me. Seriously, I'm looking for people that get super passionate, as passionate as I am about it. That's the kind of people I want to pour into. And I think this is something that is long overdue. There's other books that have come out recently. There's one on leadership called, it's called Polarity Intelligence. I've read the book, but basically there is kind of this moment, the spirit of the moment. And I think polarity is right there at it. And I think that in leadership, it's not reached Agile yet. And I think if Agilists can pull this in to their organization early, it'll make it more effective. If we see this as a trend where eventually it's going to be it's already been in Harvard Business Review. You can read about polarities there in Harvard Business Review. So business world kind of has already heard about it, but it hasn't really penetrated past like the C-level.
Correct.
Right? Enterprise Agile coaches, they've known about polarities forever. Like, why didn't you guys tell me? Right? Like, that was bad on you guys. Keeping all the secret sauce. So some of them might be mad at me for introducing this to like the layman, right? Like, team coaches can do this stuff. You don't have to be an Agile coach. You don't have to be an enterprise Agile coach to do polarities. It might actually be more impactful at the lower levels. That's my theory. And I want to prove it right. Like, this is my hypothesis, right? This is one of my hypotheses, is that this highbrow tool that, enterprise Agile coaches have been hiding and squirreling away for themselves, introduce this to the rank and file, the lower levels, and let's see what happens. Like, I really think that this is a powerful tool. I didn't create it. Again, I didn't create it. I found it. I dusted it off, and I just hope people will find interest in it enough to try it out. Like, there should be enough curiosity there with any Agilist to say, well, let me see what this is about. That's all I'm trying to do, is wake people up to this potential.
Oh, wow. I mean, that was such an elaborate answer in itself. And maybe you answered my next question partially.
Okay.
And that would have been that would have been the last question technically. Maybe just to put it out for the people so that they can differentiate between the conversation. I mean, if you have to give advice to people or agilists to maybe around this polarities, and how can they start their journey in this using this polarity mapping tool, or maybe just identifying the polarities, what would your piece of advice for them?
Yeah, I would try to get a bit educated on polarities, understand them, practice them with yourself first, because there is some theory to it. You need to understand how the mapping works. So there is a little bit of self-education there. Again, I'll have resources that will be open enough and free enough. Anybody will be able to do the 20% that gets the 80% results, right? So that's not even that important to me. I just want to get that out there. So you can find very quickly, like I mentioned, the videos of Barry Johnson. Like, that's how I got involved with it. That's how I taught myself this stuff. I'm not certified. I want to make that clear. There are certifications in Polarity through Polarity Partners. Maybe one day I'll have $4,000 to pop in there and get that cert. It's expensive, so I've not done that. But there's a lot of literature out there. There's several books from Barry's group, which is Polarity Partnership. There's other books that are coming out. This is going to be, I think, a very powerful movement. It's been around before Agile. This is like I think in the 80s, early 90s when this was kind of formulated, but I could be wrong on that detail, but it's been around for a while. But from an individual standpoint, like, I hope curiosity wins, right? I hope that you're like, okay, there's might be something to this. Let me check this out. From a practical perspective, I can share the use cases. That's part of the book, and some of those will be on the website. But mainly, the book is going to be use cases to provide more confidence, more details on the results and that sort of thing. But the operating principles, they'll all be open on my website eventually. They're already out there. I'm just trying to put them in a spot where Agilists themselves can find them easily, right? But they're already out there on YouTube. Just search for polarity mapping. There's plenty of videos out there that'll walk you through it. Again, I don't own any of this. I'm not trying to commercialize something. I want people to take it seriously and spend some time, reward your curiosity, because your curiosity on this one thing will be rewarded if you follow it. So get into that, watch a few videos, practice with yourself. And when you pull a subgroup of your team, I'm not suggesting you do this big show like, hey, this is my new tool. Look what because I was very excited in the beginning that backfired. So just learn from my experience there, where nobody cares about polarities. They don't care. They don't care. They'll be like, what kind of highfalutin thing are you trying to introduce? They'll take it as you out of your depths, and that they're probably right, frankly, if you do it that way. Maybe a retrospective. I'll share some of the retrospective formats. But Agilists are more creative than me. I'm just kind of a mediocre Agilist in some things. So I don't want to prescribe, right? So I don't want to prescribe to anybody how they should use this. I'm saying this is how I've used it, but you guys will come up with much better ways. And I'm excited to see them. Like, I'm just so excited to hopefully other people will take this, run with it, feedback, and I can't wait to see, to hear from other people that try this out. So
Absolutely. And maybe I would want to, I have a very strong opinion about what you said about maybe not trying to sell out something or not trying to commercializing and all of that.
Yeah.
I thought of sharing that off recording, but I just want to put it out so that people know how humble you are. And
Yeah.
and I also, first of all, let me begin. Saying this, I really, appreciate it, when I really liked when Vivek mentioned that you are a very humble guy and you
Uh,
are this and that,
yeah.
because I know the first conversation, the first message when you sent out to me over LinkedIn, that I come across as a weather and salty guy, and I don't see that at all. I don't know why you said that. You are a very humble guy, and you are so down to earth, and you are very, you are vulnerable throughout the episode. Even if someone watches and or listens to this episode, will know for the fact that you are very vulnerable, and that's a great leadership quality in itself. And when you talk about that, I don't want to commercialize or I don't want to earn
Yeah.
anything out of it. Let me tell you my experience, or maybe let me tell you why I'm saying this. See, we all know that there are no free lunches anyway, right? And when you said that you want to do, you want to become a certified coach in this itself, you
Yeah.
said that it's an expensive thing. If
Yeah.
everyone would have thought about it in that way, then you would have never paid anyone anything, right? So there is a price to pay for everything that you teach or maybe give it to others, right? Because there is no limit for the receiver, but there has to be a limit for the giver, right? And this I'm
Oh,
saying because I'm being giver myself and I love
yeah.
giving it to others. But honestly, if you
It's
say
another
that,
polarity,
if you
give and
want,
take.
correct, correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
And honestly, when you say that you want to give it out to for free, right? Not everyone values the reason why you're giving out for free, right? There are people who think that there would be some hidden agenda when this guy gives it out for free, right? He wants to sell something out. Maybe he wants to come across as a very nice guy. This I have done. I have burnt my fingers, and that's why I'm saying this. And also, there is a value for your time, right? So if you want to put a value, you can put this way. Otherwise, everyone. So when you set out that you're happy to help, trust me, there would be loads of messages coming your way when people when you say that people will reach out to you, and you have to put value to your time. And
Yeah.
and there is nothing wrong if you want to even do it for a commercial purpose, because you're doing with a pure intentions, right? So I would not recommend or suggest you to doing it for free, for sure. Maybe initially, if you want to maybe create that awareness, and if you want to raise that awareness with people, if you want to do it for free for a certain amount of time, maybe you
Right.
can do that. But then I would suggest, do not give out your book for free, because we all buy books, right? We all
Right.
we,
Yeah.
if every author would have thought that way, then we would have got like library of books all for free, right? So there is a lot of efforts, time, and your sacrifices that would have gone behind writing the book. So please put a value to it. Do not give it for free,
Yeah. I don't
right?
know what that. Yeah. I don't know what that's going to look like in the end. I'm going back and forth on that. Because I would like, if I am able to create an engine, that engine would be valuable, and it would help me help more people, which that's my underlying goal. So I do recognize that, right? Um, I'm wrestling with it. I'll be honest. I'm really wrestling with that because, this is really, I don't feel like I own this. It's not my IP in a sense because I didn't create it. I'm just packaging it, right? So if there's value in the packaging, then that's, so I'm wrestling
Exactly.
with
So
that
put that
inside.
value. So
Yeah,
even if you feel that you're packaging it, so there is a value to that package also, right? You would have even
yeah, no,
bought the raw
yeah,
material in packaging that. So that raw materials could be your time, your effort, your
yeah,
sacrifice, or whatever you may want to call, right? So that,
sure.
put that value at least, and put it out for the some value, and put it out for the commercial purpose is what I would say.
Yeah, so I mentioned my health scare. I don't want to overblow it, but several doctors looked at something and they're like, "That doesn't look good," and So they like rushed me to specialist, and the specialist looked at it and it's like, I can't tell what that is. We'll have to do a biopsy. This is just recent, like the last several weeks, and it really
Mhm.
woke me up. And frankly, some of this is still very reactionary on my part. I haven't really thought through this completely. All right, all I know is I came to the realization that I've not done everything that I could do. So this is my way of trying to fix that. And maybe I'm just jumping into that too quickly. I don't know, but I'm just, again, the polarity, learn, do, taking action versus reflecting.
Oh God.
Like this is how I'm wrestling with this. I'm using polarities to figure out and navigate this. So um heavy stuff, right? Like really heavy stuff sometimes, but we're all going to deal with these things. I'm not unique in that respect. I'm not special. I'm special just like everybody else, right? Um, so we all go through things. We all have to make the best of bad situations. In this situation, fortunately, they were all wrong. Like these two doctors, it's not that they didn't know what they were talking about. It looked bad, but they didn't know what it was, and we found out. Not a problem. But I'm thankful for
God's
that
grace.
because yeah, like I'm really thankful for that because you always hear it's so cliche, like this near death experience or a scare like prompted people to take action, and I never really had felt that because I don't know, I've just been very fortunate overall. But this one woke me up, and I was like, what am I here for? Like I feel like I've done a lot and helped a lot of people already, but have I done as much as I could be doing? And like I've been lazy, maybe I don't know. Like why haven't I think it's more for me, when I mapped everything out, I realized, oh, this is because you're afraid of critique. You're afraid. It was out of fear. Like I don't want to be seen as fill in the blank, and I've finally gotten over that to a degree. So to a degree.
Absolutely. I wish and pray that your there will be anything wrong over there. I hope that everything is taken care, and I'm really
Yeah.
happy to hear that doctors were proved wrong. And
Yeah.
I think this is the way uh, or the path towards your purpose, as you
Yeah.
rightly mentioned. And I mean, even when you were talking throughout this conversation, I did realize that this is more going towards maybe self-realization, self-mastery,
Yeah.
as we talked about. And that's the way, right? We cannot just be transactional when we say we are coaches. There has to be more to it than being transactional. And we all are there for the similar purpose, like finding our life purpose through our professional way. And I think that's the way forward. And thank you so much, Chris, for coming over. So many beautiful points that you have shared. I know that, I have seen Vivek writing so many notes throughout throughout the podcast. That itself shows that so many new things that we have learned. And I'm sure that people would love and uh, learn from this.
Yeah.
And just to put in a basic terms, even we as humans, we have polarity in ourselves, right? So we are not good or bad. Both of the
Right.
things, good and bad, are part of our system, right? So that's the biggest polarity that we have as humans. And similarly, we have polarities elsewhere. So thank you so much for making us realize that. And thank you so much for the wonderful session. And I know, Vivek, over to you. You would also want to share your thoughts.
No, I think you've have covered it pretty much well, Ramya. I think, and again, Chris, thank you so much for taking out time and sharing this amount of information, uh, especially related to this topic. And I think, as Ramya mentioned, this is more of a introspection about what we are doing. And as she rightly said it, right, as human, there is nothing. Black or white. There is always some aspect of gray thing, and that is where the polarity comes into. And that is what I was able to relate to. Obviously, while working, it's never going to be this or that one. It's always we need to balance it out, and that is what this podcast episode was all about. As a agilist, or even if beyond agilist, as a human being, how you are balancing out, things within your capacity to make things better for everyone around you is what makes a difference. And thank you again, for sharing such a wonderful insights. And we really loved it. And we would definitely love to have you back again. Maybe,
Yeah.
what
Absolutely.
while you were discussing, what I was thinking is maybe why not have a workshop around this topic,
Yeah.
whether, let's see how this can be turned out, but this would
Yeah.
definitely
We would
make a
love
lot
to
of difference to
host.
anyone.
Yeah. So it'd
We
be
would
great.
love to host that.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I could definitely do that. You guys have seen kind of, the board. You have the access to that. That would be the best way, I think. Just people
Yeah.
seeing it for themselves, and it is like completely scalable. Like if you look at part of the training that I give, I show that from the individual to the team to the program to the whole Agile onion can be represented, and polarities can be leveraged there. So I hope I didn't spend too much time on self mastery, but that is the core. Like if you can use it to do that,
Absolutely.
and you master like the practice with yourself and with one or two other people, you'll start gaining the confidence, right, to introduce it to the team. So um, I think there might be some upper limit, but I've had 300 people on one call, and I thought it wasn't going to work out. It actually turned out to be one of the better ones. I don't know.
Wow.
You can never predict things, right? So experimentation is what we're about anyway. But I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'd love to come back. You guys are so awesome. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much for watching this episode patiently till the end. We hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll meet you again in the next episode. Till then, if you like our podcast show, then do like, share, subscribe, and let us know your feedback in the comment section. You can also listen to the episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Audible. Thank you.